Welcome to Typecasting, where we're typing our favorite fictional characters on the Enneagram and taking on pop culture by the numbers.
Dunder Mifflin, this is Pam.
Hi, Pam. Coming at you live from Scranton, PA.
Scranton, Pennsylvania. We are out here.
We are out here. It is freezing cold. And it's also not actually Scranton, Pennsylvania, but it might as well be. It's so cold. I feel like Scranton's known for being...
Yes.
Pennsylvania is cold, right?
Pennsylvania, I'm sure they are getting the snow right alongside us right now.
Well, that's your host, Lucas Graydon, who is not Pam, but I am sure he is so charming, he would be salesperson of the year. Watch out, Dwight.
Thank you. Yeah, watch out. Assistant to the regional manager. I'm coming for your
Here
job.
We go.
And that's your co-host, Mirjana Tumatua, who I would trust with all of my paper shipping needs.
What? Why? I'm not a very punctual person.
You know what? Maybe I should change it to say that when they come out, what is it called? The Sabre tablet. I feel like you would be really good at marketing the Sabre tablet.
Thank you. I'm a professional marketer. That's what I do.
Exactly. I'd trust you with that.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I'm so excited today. What are we talking about, Lucas?
Well, in case you couldn't tell, and if you haven't picked up on these references, then you may want to sit out for the next couple, just the next couple episodes, because we are talking about The Office, which, you know, a classic. I think a controversial classic. There are some people who say that The Office is better than Parks and Rec. Some people would disagree. I may have an opinion one way or the other, but anyway, we are talking about a couple of the characters from The Office. I'm super excited to get into it. Obviously, we talked about Bridgerton last time, but this is one of those shows that everybody has heard about before. It ended years ago. Do you remember where you were when The Office ended? Because weirdly enough, I do.
I actually do. I was at my cousin's house downtown Chicago, and I remember we were trying frantically to get home in time. We were on the other side of town, and we were trying to take all of these. I think our train might have broken down because it was before DVR. We couldn't record it, so we just had to get there in time. So I remember being there, and then I hid in her bathroom because I hadn't caught up yet and I didn't want to see it.
Yes. No, so I didn't watch The Office live. I caught it on Netflix after it ended, but all of my best friends were obsessed with it, and we were at high school, after school, I was a theater kid, surprise, surprise. And we were backstage during rehearsal one night, and everyone was trying to find a way to live stream it on their school laptops. And I remember a bunch of people in this dark little side choir room, when they were not rehearsing, they were all huddled around this one tiny laptop trying to watch the finale. And they were all getting super emotional about it. And I had no idea what was going on, but I remember it so vividly just because The Office was the talk of the town.
Absolutely. Well, and I remember if you're still along for a ride, I'm hoping you love The Office, but one of the things that I'm most ashamed of in my past is that when I was in high school, maybe a freshman, there was a girl who was new to school and my friend group loved The Office. And she sat with us, and we really liked her. But it sounds so mean. My friend group was so sweet, but for some reason we would talk about The Office, and she never knew what we were talking about. And so we pretended they were people from the school that she just hadn't met yet. And so we would tell the story about Dwight brought a gun to the library instead of Dwight.
Oh my god!
And we thought we were so funny, but it's so cruel to make her think we have all these friends. I know, and we all would pick characters that we were. So I was Kelly, and I was dating Ryan, and obviously Ryan's not real, and we all picked what characters we would be, and we would tell the story as if we were in that situation. So that is the meanest thing I ever took part in high school, and now everyone knows about it.
One day she was browsing through Netflix and was I'm gonna finally watch The Office, and then she's gonna be oh my gosh, this is exactly what happened at my high school.
I wonder, I think we broke it to her and she wasn't that mad, but I mean, that's literally, I felt so guilty about it.
If I were her, I would probably be like, why have these kids been pretending that they're TV show characters for like 3 months?
Because we were from Indiana and there was nothing else to do. We were bored out of our minds.
True. That is fair. As somebody who also went to high school in Indiana, I understand. Well, why don't we go ahead and start talking about our first character, Mirjanatu, especially with this character. I have to say, I feel similarly as to when we did our villains episode, because I'm like, these are not good people. Like, I feel a little nervous about typing them.
You know, when people are like, when people have like red flags, and mine is like, if people like actually love Michael Scott, like you can appreciate, like, I think he's a funny character, especially for the time, very insensitive, but like, and I do think the writers did, I'm listening to The Office ladies, and I'm like, it is really cool to see how the authors or the writers did a great job. I think like he was really terrible, but they still pretty much made him likable. And it's like a phenomenon to me, like that everyone loves him so much, even though he says some really awful things. So that is our first character. If you haven't guessed it, it's Michael Scott. And Michael Scott is the manager of Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. And we are set in this mockumentary. In this universe, it's real life, and it's a documentary about a paper company in a world that paper is dying. And they follow the crew around for 9 seasons. And we just get to know these characters that are so ridiculous and over the top and just like caricatures. They're just caricatures of real people we all know and love in our office, or not so love, because there's like, you know, those random people. So I think what Lucas, what you're alluding to is like, I feel bad giving them any Enneagram type because they are so out of this world and ridiculous. But right. I do think like in the same way, like sometimes we take the Enneagram a little too seriously too. Like it's just a tool and it doesn't like define us as a person. And so I think like what we're about to say, like none of this, like don't take this to heart. Like I think the Enneagram has been a super useful tool, but like we're going to say who we think they are. And I think it's just going to be silly and funny. And I think it's going to be a great time.
And like we said before, I mean, when we were typing people like Thanos, it's like, just because you share a type with a certain character, that does not mean you are that character. Every type has levels of health and unhealth, and we see really beautiful examples of both in a lot of different characters. And this is not here to pigeonhole you. If you remember some of our rules, the Enneagram is not a box. It's a tool. So use it when it's helpful and don't when it's not.
Exactly. I love that. Lucas, now that we know who Michael Scott is, I'd love to hear what you think his type is.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So I did rewatch a couple episodes for preparation, and I texted you earlier today, Mirjanatu. I was like, I forgot how terrible of a person Michael Scott is, at least in some of the earlier seasons. But one of the episodes that I watched was The Dundies, the season 2 premiere, and Michael is just jet set and determined on putting on a good awards show for his employees. And he wants to be entertaining in a way that I think he is a type 7. One of the reasons, the type 7, the enthusiast, they are all about bringing joy to the people around them and having fun, having a good time. I think we see a lot throughout the series. Michael does not want to admit when things are going badly. He is an optimist to the extreme. And he cares, especially in this episode, he's like, oh, I have to be funny. People have to laugh at my jokes. Like, I have to make sure people are having a good time. However, I think one of Michael's biggest challenges as a character, as a person, is actually empathizing with and understanding the emotions of the people around him. He a lot of times is oblivious to the way that people are actually feeling and very much lives kind of in his own head. And the type 7 sits over in the thinking triad, in the head triad. And interestingly, when it comes to arrows of stress and security, and as well as wings and triads, the 7 is the only number on the Enneagram that does not touch a number in the heart triad. So in a lot of ways, 7s find themselves the most disconnected from their hearts. And I think that the heart triad or the feeling triad gives us a lot of our empathy and our ability to feel what other people are feeling. And I think that there's a disconnect there for Michael. So I kind of see him as a type 7, probably a 7-wing 6. Not just because, I mean, type 8s really like confrontation and Michael does not like confrontation, but also 6s really value their relationships, their friendships, that loyalty. And I think we see that with characters like Dwight and just how much he cares about the people in the Dunder Mifflin office in general. So that's where I'm starting, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, I thought similarly, like, you think Michael Scott, you picture him bouncing off the walls, loving a party, doing a good thing. Like, I think 7 exudes from him. However, when I took a deep dive into what I thought his motivations behind all of these things were, they were twofold. He loves people so much. He has a tricky time loving them well. I think he's just kind of dumb. That's how he was written. It's not necessarily his fault. Right. And so, but he loves the people around him and he loves them very, very much. And everything he does is for the people around him. I think of how he is working these extra late nights for Jan. I think of how he throws these parties for every single person in the office and remembers all of their birthdays and how excited he is when they want to go to lunch with him and how sad he is when they don't, and how he just really, out of all of these things, he just really wants to be loved. And so I think he's a 2, because that's where all his motivation comes from, is being able to be loved and seen as revered. Like the obvious infamous quote.
Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
And it's like, that's so obviously Michael Scott and who he is. He wants to be loved so much. And then I think separately, I think he's a 3 because one of the things is he's just definitely not a 1. He's not organized at all. But he's also an incredible salesman, and he is so willing and able to shift to whoever's in the room. He has a tricky time doing it. He definitely thinks people would like something that they don't like most of the time. But
Right.
I think he shifts to who he is. And he is one of the great things about Michael Scott. And because you're always like, how does he keep his job? And then you actually see him try to sell paper. And it's like, oh, that's why. Because he's actually super good at selling paper. And he's a great salesman in a way that I think 3s often are. But I think it gets his 2 of loving things and loving people and buying these extravagant gifts and bouncy houses and just doing whatever comes his way because he wants to he wants to have a performance. He loves to be center of attention like a 3, but I think he loves people around him. So he's a 2-wing 3.
Okay. I can see it. The secondary number that I was drawn to was the type 3 because, and like you said, salesman, the word that I wrote down was showman, especially just he needs to put on these performances, whatever the occasion is. He has to be the center of attention, like you talked about. And I think that the type 3 and the type 7 are most likely to be center of attention or life of the party in those ways. I think in a similar way, I can definitely see a 3-wing 2, but I struggle with the 2. And I think maybe it's just because, like you said, it's how he's written. It's the nature of the comedy. I think he wants to love people well, but I don't think he knows how to love people well in a way that the people around him, I don't think feel well served and, well loved in the way that I think so many people in relationship with 2s do. So I think that's where I struggle with it. I struggle with, I'm like, how could a type 2 spend so much time in their life misreading the people around them? So maybe you can speak to that, or what do you think of that 7 with maybe that wing 6 that drives those relationships? Or maybe the 3-wing 2. I don't know. I
don't think he's a 7. I think I can't really tell what his motivation is. I just don't think I think he also is in his emotions a lot. I think of when he he mopes kind of a lot, and he makes everyone like pay attention to him moping, which I think honestly drives me more towards the 3 and like just like misplaced emotions of like the force, his wing force like coming in, you know, because we all like wing to both in certain circumstances.
In different areas.
And he just does not know what to do with his emotions. And like when he runs away on the train, but that could be a 7 thing too. What were you going to say?
And yeah, that was something where I think that so I think where I saw the 3, and maybe this is the 2, but like when he is like putting on these performances or these different shows, when people aren't having a good time, I think he feels sorry for himself more than he feels sorry for the people. And because like you said, he does know how to mope, he does know how to pout, and like for me, that was like, oh, the and maybe the 7, but maybe the type 3, like he isn't getting the like attention and the admiration that he wants. And that's where he starts to mope, as opposed to like he feels, but maybe he does, as I'm kind of talking myself out of it. Maybe he feels sad that he isn't able to give the people the joy that he wants to be giving them. You know, he's like, I'm trying to love you. Why don't you feel loved? And maybe that's where that sadness comes in. I don't know.
So I think that's part of it. I don't think it's because I also think he's mostly unaware. Like, I don't know if he actually always, it's
very
hard because
oblivious.
one of the things is we have like 6 seasons with him. Right. So there's a lot of character development. It's not, and it's, you know, weekly episodes for 6 years. So I think it's a little tricky to say where he is. I wish I had more evidence to support my claim. I just have a gut feeling he's not a 7, and I would like to put him, I feel like 2 is just so much better than 3, but not like more suiting, not better.
Right. Just fits better.
I love my wing 3 so much, but I have a hard time budging from that, but I think he's a 3 or 2, not a 7. I'd love to hear what other people out there think, but unfortunately it's just us right now.
Yes, I know. I'm very interested to see what you all think. Please let us know. But I think that, like, for the sake of our episode, I can agree on the 2 wing 3. I think you make a really good argument. And even as I'm just reframing some of those scenes that I'm thinking of in my mind, like you said, like, I want them to be afraid of how much they love me. What a 2 wing 3 thing to say in the best way. But like, I love that. I love that. And yeah, I think that some of that is just some of the points where I trip over it and things like that are just the nature of him as a character being so oblivious. And so he like, and he is a character. He doesn't always function as a real person would. Because even when we're talking about characters in Marvel that have been over like 8 movies or something, 8 movies is nothing to the amount of time that we see Michael like grow and change and adapt to different situations. So there is a wide variety of him as a character in those different examples. So I'm here with you. I will agree on the 2 wing 3.
I love it. Let's move on to our next character, Lucas. I'm so excited to talk about this character.
Oh my goodness. Easily, I think the star of the show. Michael is maybe the main character, but nobody steals the show quite like Dwight Schrute. Assistant to the regional manager, even though he wants you to think he's assistant regional manager. He is hardworking. He is Michael's most devoted, most loyal fan and follower and coworker. And he always knows what's best too, and he is not afraid to correct anybody who he thinks is wrong. He's the person in the front row who like is always raising his hand to volunteer to be a participant or things like that in group examples or conferences and things like that. So quite a character. He and Jim have the rivalry that has spawned the best pranks of all time as well. So yeah, he is quite the character. Marjana too, what do you think his Enneagram type is?
Okay, so Dwight Schrute, what an icon. And what an incredible performance by Rainn Wilson. I think it's just so cool. One of the things about all of these characters that we're going to talk about is like, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it's like in all of the audience's mind, they played it so well. They are like, they still are who they were in the show.
Became those characters.
Really
yes.
did. And I think that like in a way that like shows that are just as iconic, like the actors still have their own lives, or like we refuse to give anyone from The Office. And I think Rainn Wilson brought so much to the character of Dwight. And one of the things for me out of the three today, this was the easiest for me. I think there's a lot of evidence to support that Dwight is a 6. He is incredibly loyal, so much so it's like, okay, you like, do you like make sure you're taking care of yourself, buddy, self-care.
Right.
But when you think of his relationship to Michael, firstly, who pretty consistently is kind of a jerk to him. His strange allegiance to Dunder Mifflin, and specifically that branch, to Angela when they're dating, and how he like will turn himself in before he will say that they're dating because it's against her wishes. And honestly, just that sweet, tender, like inner side that you finally get to see in some really sweet moments with Angela, or sometimes Pam, that just like the 6s, when they feel safe, they can bring down their walls and share. I just think he's so obviously a 6. And then like, in addition, he's always prepared for like the worst case scenario. I think that would be a good time to play a clip from that opener where he like is talking about all of his different weapons in the office.
I keep various weaponry strategically placed around the office. I saved Jim's life with a can of pepper spray I had Velcroed under my desk. People say, oh, it's dangerous to keep weapons in the home or the workplace. Well, I say, it's better to be hurt by someone you know accidentally than by a stranger on purpose.
The one that I was thinking of was when he's like, we need to practice fire preparedness. And so he like locks all the doors and starts like putting smoke under. He sets the trash can on fire, and then Angela like throws her cat through the ceiling.
Oh my gosh.
I think that there are a lot of good cold opens for The Office, but that may be my favorite cold open of all time.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. It is so funny because he's prepared for everything, and he expects everyone else to be prepared for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's so funny. I think he's wing 5. Like his hobbies are very 5-esque to me. He loves to understand and obtain knowledge, and he knows everything about, Bears, Beads, Battlestar Galactica, as we all know. Like he just loves and like Scranton and like the agro Airbnb business, agro architecture, maybe it's a hybrid word that I don't think is real. Right. I just adore Dwight's character, and he is, he can definitely be very rude, but overall I think he's very lovable, and just like kind of that weird guy at school that's like, if you're out of money, he would always give you some. Like, he's just like some really sweet kid. I love him.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay, I love your read on him. And 6 is a number that I came to kind of near the very end of my analysis. But I had a couple different numbers in my head at first. The first one, and it was actually kind of brought to mind from his insistence on saying that he's assistant regional manager, and everyone corrects him and saying assistant to the regional manager, was the type 3, because type 3s are achievers, and they are all about that outward appearance of success and appearing successful. I think for him, it may be less about success and more about authority. I think he really wants authority, and he relishes in any opportunity to have that authority. Whenever Michael puts him in charge of the office or things like that, he takes full advantage.
But Michael never puts him in charge of the office. He always finds a way to make himself in charge.
He just loopholes himself into it. But the 3 was kind of where I initially came down. Then I moved around to the type 1. I was watching the episode where he finds a discarded joint in the parking lot. And so he calls whoever he can to get urinologists into the office and makes everybody undergo a drug screening. He's conducting interviews. He's trying to figure out who brought drugs onto the premises. He is all about enforcing the law. And I think a lot of times he is what is right and wrong. And again, I think it actually maybe an authority thing more than it is a right and wrong thing.
But, and then again, at the end, Lucas, just to be super clear on that episode, in the end, he ends up donating his urine to Michael because he is so loyal to him.
Exactly.
And that is absolutely not the right thing to do.
That is, and so that is where the 6 came into me, because Michael asks him for his clean pee sample, and he is like caught in this conflict all episode about what he should do and what's right, because he would do anything for Michael, but it's going against his moral code. And so that really strong moral code is why I thought, okay, maybe he's a type 1. But in the end, his loyalty and his love for Michael wins out. And that's where that 6 came in. And he even gives up. He recuses his badge, his volunteer badge, and he has to turn it in and resign because of his moral compass. But honestly, I agree. I think that in the end, that larger imperative for him is being loyal to Michael. And so I 100% agree. He had that moral conflict that made me think, okay, he's a type 1. And I think he is still very strongly guided by his moral compass. But in the end, nothing stops him from helping his friends, and especially Michael. That deep loyalty, that combination of loyalty and like emergency preparedness is so beautifully type 6 in a way that I 100% agree with you. I think it is maybe one of the best images of a number. And like I said, we are not calling all type 6s Dwight Schrute, because he has some less than favorable characteristics, but he also has these really beautiful characteristics that I think are pointing to that type 6.
Absolutely. Well, I think we can settle then. Did you think of a wing? Did you think he was a 7 or a 5? Or
he is? I would definitely agree that he's a 6 wing 5. The type 7, I think, like, has a lot of like joy and spontaneity, and I think that Dwight does not want to be like surprised. He doesn't want to know, or he wants to know what's coming next. He's not one for just like, oh, a random weekend of plans with his friends. Like, he needs the itinerary first.
Absolutely. We love that for him.
6 wing 5 for sure. You had it spot on. I just had to contribute something so that it wasn't just all you.
I so appreciate that. I love when we agree.
Me too.
Oh my goodness. Well, this next character is just the tiniest but mightiest character on The Office. I think that there's like so many short jokes to poor Angela, but I don't consider her poor Angela. She's definitely
I was watching a compilation, and she talks about how the clothes at wherever she shops.
Sometimes the clothes at Gap Kids are just too flashy, so I'm forced to go to the American Girl store and order clothes for large colonial dolls.
Oh gosh. And she is Commander-in-Chief. Honestly, I think of all the characters, we go through a lot of managers at Dunder Mifflin. I think if Angela's belief system allowed her as a woman to be a leader, she might actually have done the best job, but unfortunately it does not.
She definitely would have been the most productive. I think morale would have been pretty low, but I think like they would have gotten their work done.
I think it would. It's hard to know, but in my mind, she's better than Dwight. like thrived off of making morale low, but who knows? She was also behind the reins when he was in charge, so who knows? But our next character is Angela, who is a devout Christian, a vegetarian, but also like sometimes a feminine. Like, she'll randomly throw in like, our manager could be a woman, and everyone kind of like laughs at her like it's a joke. And I'm like, oh, 2012, what a time. 2008. But she's a really fun character. Head of accounting, Dwight's love interest, and Angela Martin. We love her.
And his eventual wife. I mean, that's the series finale, isn't it?
I know.
The two of them finally getting married.
Again, we're spoiler-filled podcast, and I always just like I always try not to, but it's been out for like 10 years.
Retroactive spoiler warning for 20 seconds ago when I just spoiled it, but...
Okay, what do you think her number is?
Okay, so you said that Dwight was your easiest character to type. I will say that for me, Angela was the easiest character to type. I watched Angela as she rules the party planning committee with her iron fist. She is the judge, jury, and executioner about what is right and what is wrong. And she's not afraid to tell people exactly what they are doing wrong. And so I do think that Angela is a type 1. I think that she is a perfectionist. If you could, I mean, she is a perfectionist to a T. I mean, it's probably the first word she would use to describe herself. If anybody ever accused her of doing her job wrong, I know she would be very upset about it. And so I think that
Absolutely.
she has that ability to see areas of improvement and growth for other people. Interestingly, I think that she's a wing 2. And I don't think that we see that a ton in her relationships with other people, but I do think that we see that in her relationships with her cats. I know we were laughing earlier about how she throws her cat into the ceiling, but I think that we see throughout the series, one of her softest sides and one of her areas of biggest vulnerability is her relationship with her many different cats. And she cares for them so lovingly and so maternally. She even complains that Dunder Mifflin doesn't offer maternity leave when you get a new cat. And I think that we just see this really softer, nurturing, maternal side to her that I think is that wing 2 in play. But I think that she most of the time lives right in that type 1, right on the edge of the thinking triad. And that's where I see Angela. But I want to know what you think. If you disagree, I will be fascinated to hear what you have to say.
I think she was like my hardest one. She wasn't my hardest, but the middle ground, because she doesn't have a lot of positive characteristics.
See, this is what I meant about like typing some of these characters.
And I feel bad because Thanos was also a 1.
I think I will say, I don't know if I'm excited to hear what you have to say, but I do think that Thanos and Angela are very different characters. Like,
is that better or worse for the ones out there listening? I don't know.
That's a good question. Good question.
But I do also think like the way she like knows what's right and what's wrong, the way she has everything meticulously planned, and I think she also has some like, she has that inner voice that might doubt her every once in a while. And I think you like randomly hear stuff about her childhood and you go, oh, like that probably was rough. And like,
yeah.
And I think that's probably her. She's really, really stubborn, which isn't something we always see with ones. They're usually like willing to fight for what's right, but like her little like talking head when she speaks to like the fact that she hasn't talked to her sister in like 20 years and she doesn't even remember like why they're mad, but she's just not going to be the one to break.
Right.
And so I was like trying to explore the characters that she might be, or different Enneagram types that she might be. But again, at the end of the day, I picked the 1, and I think she just like has a really strong moral code. But I love those moments where she's just like so enamored and in love with Dwight, and we get to see her soft side, or when she talks about her cats. And I do think she. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, I think, too, when Angela falls in love, she really does fall in love. Like, when we see her talk about those relationships, whether it be with Dwight or with Andy or with her... what is he, a congressman husband that then has a little controversy with Oscar? She really does put her heart into those relationships. It takes a lot to get... I think close to Angela, but when you do, I think that she does really show a really caring side to her.
Absolutely. I would agree. And I don't think we get to see that with Andy, really.
Maybe not. I will say it's been a while since I've seen later Office, so like, I will admit I'm not an expert on her and Andy's relationship.
But I think like there's just also like one of the interesting things about The Office that I think is like so reminiscent to like real life is, you know, we spend so much time at the place we work, but we don't really like that's not who we really are. Like we're told not to bring our like whole self. We're professional when we're at work,
right? And
so I'd love to see her like outside of work and not with her coworkers. And I think she might kind of loosen up. And like we could see a little more of that compassion that she gives her animals, and like her justice code being like fighting for good, as so many ones do. But she's just a funky one.
Yes, she is.
We love her though so much. Well, that concludes our episode, Lucas.
It does. We made it through all 3. How much fun. Like I said, I was a little nervous for this episode, but I actually love where we landed on all of these characters. Do you agree then on that wing 2, I guess, before we let Angela go?
Oh, yes, I do. Mostly, though, just because I know she's not a 9.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I see that too. No, I love it. I am so excited to have a little throwback, to dive back into The Office. It's one of the most profitable or most expensive shows like on streaming. The amount of money that Netflix paid for it last year, and I think that Peacock paid to finally get it back from Netflix, it is a cash cow. So it was fun to kind of revisit it. I could only watch full episodes of season 1 and 2 because I was not going to pay for Peacock. I have enough streaming services to pay for right now. But we're not done yet. We have a couple more Office characters to talk about next week, don't we?
I absolutely cannot wait for next week's episode. My, what is the right word? One of my favorite characters, my inner character, my heart, my love. I love her so much. Kelly Kapoor. And then we're also going to do a little one too with Pam and Jim because everyone kills.
I guess we'll throw them in too, but we all know Kelly's the real star of the show.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I'm like so smart now. You could ask me what's the best company in the world and I would be like, blah, 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 blah. Oh my goodness. All right, Lucas. Well, I'll see you later.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Typecasting. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at TypecastingPod, where you can vote in our weekly polls. Leave a review and be sure to join us next week when we take on more pop culture by the numbers.